Hello and welcome. I'm Stream News Director Mark Heim, and with the Relay for Life, the American Cancer Society Relay for Life coming up in the very near future, we're taking an opportunity to talk about the subject of cancer from many different perspectives. We have several guests with us today, four in particular, and I'm going to allow each of the guests to introduce themselves as we go around the circle here. And Emily Altemeyer will introduce herself and will carry the conversation on. So to my immediate left, Margie Axton. Margie, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am Margie Axton. I am a 4-year cancer survivor. I am also involved in Relay for Life for the 4th year. I have helped with survivor and co-chairperson, and currently I am doing the Luminaria ceremony. I also am the person responsible for making everything purple in town.
Wow, that sounds like fun.
Painting the shoes was lots of fun.
Okay, immediately to your left is Tina Caldwell. Tina, how about telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Mark. Hi, I'm Tina Caldwell. I am the Senior Manager, Relay for Life with the American Cancer Society. I have been involved with the organization for 13 years, and I actually work a 9-county area and get to work with lots of wonderful and amazing volunteers like these ladies.
So you get to travel a little bit.
I travel a little bit, and it is just amazing the people that I meet and the stories they have to tell and how inspirational the volunteers are that do the Relay for Life events.
So it doesn't sound like I'll have to work too hard to find you saying Warren or Oil City.
No, you won't. You won't have to work very hard at that at all.
Okay, Judy Pollock, you're next. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Judy Pollock. I'm a nurse at the Titusville Hospital working in the oncology side. I've been involved with Relay for Life since it started in Utah as a family team. We've been in Titusville, I believe, for 13 years. We've done survivors. I've done mission moments for the last couple, but the last 2 years I've been doing survivors. And I just find it really, very rewarding to be involved with Relay and to be able to recognize the survivors in their caregivers.
I know that oncology is a very challenging field to be in, and I know that being an RN is especially challenging. But I would imagine that it takes maybe some special training, maybe some special inner qualities to do your job as well. Is that pretty accurate?
I do have an oncology certification. Everyone who works in our department is oncology certified, so we can pass the chemotherapy. And I also think that you have to have a lot of empathy and compassion when you work in oncology. You also have to be able to love your patients. You always hope for the best. Sometimes you have to prepare for the worst. But I find it very rewarding. I find the patients always give me so much more than I end up giving them.
Excellent. And then, Donna, you're the last of our guests. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Donna Clendenin. I'm the clinical manager of the Titusville Office of Hospice of Crawford County, which is a fancy way of saying head nurse. I've been there for about 11 years, and I actually celebrated my 40th anniversary as an RN. So it's been my life, and I'm pleased to be here.
Excellent. Very good. And Emily Altemeyer, wearer of many hats in the community, but here you have a special role tonight. Tell us about that.
That's right. Well, I'm here as a former caregiver to a cancer patient, and also I have roles in the Relay for Life as the online and publicity chairperson. And so I've gotten to know all of these ladies and work with them as a caregiver and also then in my roles in Relay for Life. So they're wonderful people, and that's absolutely right. The people who are involved in Relay or who care for people with cancer or go through cancer, it's very special. And so it's nice to have you all here and willing to talk about something that a lot of people don't like to talk about.
The statement is rather cliche, but it's also very true, is that most everyone that you get a chance to speak to has some experience with someone who has had cancer, who is fighting cancer, who has survived it, or someone who has passed from this life. And I imagine this, well, it's going to be true with this entire group here. I imagine that's a good way to start things off.
Right. I think talking about the prevalence of cancer is a great way. If there happens to be anyone viewing this program who doesn't have experience with cancer, I would find that surprising. But let's maybe, Tina, if you want to talk a little bit about the statistics of how pervasive cancer is these days.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, 1 out of 3 women and 1 out of 2 men will be diagnosed with cancer. That is a statistic that we are living with. We are finally starting to see an actual downturn in the number of diagnoses every year. We have seen a 20% decrease in the mortality over the last 20 years, which is wonderful. And that truly goes to the research, it goes to better treatment, it goes to better care, earlier detection. One of the things that the American Cancer Society is really wanting to get out there, and we can't emphasize enough, is that early detection. That is critical. We know that there are certain cancers, like colorectal cancer, that early detection will save people's lives. We know that. We know that it's like a 95% success rate with early detection. So that's critical. So getting that word out, that helps to do the decrease in the mortality. But unfortunately, we will have people diagnosed with cancer. So we need to be able to provide services in our communities and do research in order to have better treatment, better detection, and really head off this disease.
I noticed that you mentioned a couple of times early detection. That seems to be one of the quivers in the sling of arrows that you carry around. Is just pushing back that age at which early detection begins. Is that a preventative measure in itself, or is that based on some research?
It's definitely based on research. We are always looking at not just the American Cancer Society, but other organizations that have recommendations. We're always looking at when is it the most beneficial to start the screenings and to start doing particular things. One of the things we want to educate everyone on is you need to know your body. You need to know when it's not working right, when it's when things are being different. And you need to be willing to have that open communication with your doctor about that. Not telling your doctor that you found a spot and you think it looks a little weird is not helping anybody. You need to be willing to do that and be upfront and say, I see this happening. I know from my own life, I am a caregiver in my own personal life, and one of the survivors that I helped to take care of, that was it. The spot looks a little weird. It looks a little weird. Oh, well, it took a little nagging, but sure enough, that little weird spot needed to be taken care of. So we look at those guidelines. We look at them very carefully. We also look at the technology. That is it going to make a big difference? And some of the other things that people really need to know is their background. What is that family history of specific cancers, cancer in general, and other illnesses, heart disease, all of that. I mean, we need to know. We need to be talking about it. My grandmother was born in 1913. And I remember as a child, my grandmother always talked about when people got sugar and they got the C word. Now, I was little, and I didn't know why it was bad to get sugar, but my mother bought it every week at the store. So that really confused me. The sugar and the C word, that's not helping anybody. We're talking about it today, and that's critical. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about it at an early age. We need to make sure that people understand this is something that you need to be aware of. You need to take action, and there's things you can do to help reduce your risk of getting cancer, as well as if you are diagnosed, the steps you can take to help your path to wellness.
You know, Emily, it really sounds like education and open communication among everyone concerned is really what needs to happen when the rubber hits the road.
Absolutely. And maybe we can have Margie talk a little bit about her own personal experience, kind of set an example for how you went through this in your own life as a cancer survivor.
Well, just like the Tim McGraw song, I was in my early 40s when a moment stopped me on a dime. I had a regular mammogram, one of my very first one, my second one actually, in my entire life, and was met with, you need to go have an ultrasound, and you need to see this doctor, who then said you need to have a biopsy, and then called me on July 21st, 2009, and said, well, unfortunately, it looks like cancer. Any questions? And I was a single mom at the time, with a boy in 6th grade and a girl in 3rd grade, and I just stood there on the phone saying, no, I don't have any questions. I didn't know what was going on. I was very blessed with a group of women from both my church and my personal life that surrounded me. And my one friend said to me, I'm never going to tell you what to do, but you're going to McGee. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, but that's where you're going. And I went down, and again, through all of the testing, and it was a month of tests between my diagnosis and my surgery, and it felt like 12 years. But I was at the right place with the right doctor. I ended up having a partial mastectomy. My tumor, sometimes I tell the kids my tumor was mailed to California. Just because I think that sounds cool. But it really was like there was a piece of it mailed somewhere to California where they were doing a new kind of a test to decide what kind of treatment would best work on my exact cancer that was in my body. And it turned out I didn't need to have chemotherapy, that chemotherapy would have only benefited me 1% of a point. And my oncologist said, it's not worth putting you through that. So I was very blessed. Again, I had 7.5 weeks of radiation, slept a lot, cried a lot. My caregivers were my 3rd grade daughter and my 6th grade son. And so the three of us have a very unusual relationship. I would wake up in the middle of the night and my son was in a sleeping bag next to me and my daughter was right beside me. Or I'd wake up because somebody's finger was right here underneath my nose to see if I was still breathing. And the three of us promised each other at that time that we would never keep secrets. And I've got a 16-year-old now and a 13-year-old daughter, and I think I know everything. Sometimes I tell my 16-year-old son, you don't need to tell your mother that. That's one of the things you don't tell your mom. But anyway, I still go every 4 months. I'm still on tamoxifen, which is a cancer-fighting drug, and I go every 4 months to a doctor of some sort and have checkups, and everything keeps coming back clear and clear, and I just hold my breath and keep my prayers up that someday they're going to say to me, cancer-free, goodbye, good luck.
You know, one of the things that really struck me in listening to you is the network of people that you surround yourself with. As in everything else in life, when you surround yourselves with positive people, I imagine in this case that's a big help to you.
Like I said, I was a single mom. I didn't have a partner. My husband had left, and it was just me and the kids. And I had friends who came out of the woodwork, and had it not been for them, I don't know that I could have remained upbeat and positive. I had friends taking time off of work to take me to doctor's appointments, bringing dinner, taking my kids to their activities. It was just a blessing that is one of the reasons why I want to do Relay for Life so badly, because they gave when they didn't have to give, and I want to be able to give back.
That giving, that networking is very, very important. It's very obvious that it's important, but it's not something that just happens overnight, although sometimes when there's a catastrophic event, people do come out of the woodwork very quickly, but even so, those networks just don't come about overnight. How do they develop, Emily?
Well, and I think that's something that definitely happens in our relay community, which is really nice. When you walk into a relay meeting that everyone in there has already been touched by cancer in some way. So you can say chemo or you can say radiation, and people just know what you're talking about. They know, like, okay, so we don't want to have anything that's going to smell weird because it's going to make you sick to your stomach, or, we know that you're going to be really tired, so we're not going to ask anything of you for right now, or we know that you've committed to something, but it's only tentative because cancer days are up and down. It's some days you can't do what you said you're going to do, or suddenly you need another test, or your treatment schedule has changed. So everything's always tentative and up in the air, and it's nice to be in a community of people who understand that. Cancer becomes a lifestyle, and whether you like it or not, and you're in the club, and those people just know what you're going through. And I think we've all been really fortunate that we've been able to help one another when we've been in that, you've been in those shoes before, so you can help one another through whatever part of it there is. And it's the same thing with having, great nurses and doctors and hospice care, and the support of the American Cancer Society just really helps people get through at a time when they might not even be really emotionally prepared to face what they're going through, or even aware that they are going through something a lot of the time. It's just, you put one foot forward every day, and and do your best, or you don't do your best. And people who understand cancer know that some days you're going to be a jerk, and you're going to be crying uncontrollably, or you're not going to be patient. And it's really important to be around people who understand that. And then I think when people get through it, they are so eager to be able to be that support system for other people. And I think that's how Relay gains a lot of its power. It's people wanting to give back for what they got. And that's really, it's really special. And
you mentioned lifestyle, which is very striking to me as well. And I have a couple of comments I'll direct both to Donna and to Judy. You can fight among yourselves who's going to get the first to talk. But I imagine that the both of you in your respective roles in the cancer community have a lot to do with helping people cope with the lifestyle of cancer.
Yes. You're dealing with the patient, but you're also dealing with the family. And it always amazes me. It always amazes me how people come together when they have a cancer diagnosis. And some people will just focus on the patient, but you can't. You have to focus on everyone. And when we talk about caregivers, Emily was a caregiver, but Emily also had caregivers. And I think that's so important to know that a cancer patient doesn't have one caregiver. You had your children, but you also had your friends. Think of how many people helped you on your cancer journey. And that's what always amazes me. People that you didn't even realize were close to may be the ones that send you a card. They may send you, they may make you a meal. They may make you laugh. I mean, there are so many people involved, like I said, not just the cancer patient and their immediate spouse or whoever. And I think sometimes we forget that. And it's so nice to see.
Cancer just doesn't happen to the patient. It happens to everybody around that patient. And everybody needs support. Everybody needs unconditional regard. Sometimes caregivers need more than patients, because without the caregiver, where would the patient be? And I think as we make incredible medical advances, and we truly do, and I know you see that every day, we cannot lose touch with the human element of healing. Cure is one thing, but healing encompasses everybody and everything. When you talk about lifestyle things, Mark, the most important thing I tell people is you got to have at least 5 good belly laughs a day. You got to laugh. And I know patients and families often expect that the hospice nurses are going to come in and we're going to be dressed in black and we're going to be very somber, sober people. And we're crazy and we laugh because we know that each moment of life is precious. You got to laugh, you got to cry. But laughing increases your immune system, it increases your ability to breathe. We need to not get caught up in the magic of miracle science. We have to be caught up in the magic of life. And I hope that that's what hospice brings to this whole discussion, because whether we like it or not, each one of us is going to be beyond a cure someday. And I get really angry at some doctors when they finally talk to their patient about hospice. Their approach is, there's nothing more I can do for you, which is not a good thing, because there's always something more you can do for somebody. There's always a hope for something. Now, maybe your hopes change as you progress through your illness, but there's always hope, and there are miracles. But I always want people to remember that healing is more than just the medicine.
I like your phrase, unconditional regard. In my own experience, my mother died of lymphoma about 10.5 years ago. And I remember one day, she just had a really giddy day. There was a day where she tried on about a dozen different wigs, probably 3 dozen different hats, and it was just like a dress-up party. And I remember her laughing hard, like you mentioned. There were other days where it was 180 degrees out. There were always those rough days, and there were ups and downs. But I imagine, as you say, humor has to be a very big part of this.
You have to know when to laugh with your patients, and you also have to know when to cry with your patients. I'm always amazed at, and I'm sure I've said this to you, Emily. I mean, really, we knock on people's doors at possibly the worst time of their life, and they let us in. When you talk about courage, think about that.
Yeah. I met Donna in my driveway. She was carrying a portable toilet. She was, "Are you a hugger? I'm a hugger." Okay. And you're off and running, and you just go with it. And it's so wonderful to have people who are that comfortable with a very uncomfortable job, and they just kind of take you by the hand and make it seem okay and normal, and you just go with it.
So just a little bit of potty humor in the driveway.
Yes, just a little bit. There's always a little potty humor.
And not everybody can carry that off.
Right. Exactly. But when you were talking about healing, if you could share a little bit about hospice bereavement classes while we're on that subject.
One of the things that we offer to our community is that we do bereavement follow-up. Grief will affect everybody at some point in your journey. We find most of the time that patients that we have, families of patients that we have cared for, we try to start that grief journey right at the beginning. But oftentimes, if families have not been involved in hospice or have had a sudden death, it's like an enormous black boulder falling upon you. So we offer, twice a year, we offer what we call bereavement classes, which I really don't know why we call it that, because you really can't teach somebody to grieve. We used to think of grief as a very medical thing that we could treat and fix with a pill or whatever. But grief really is an individual journey. We all will respond to grief in different ways. We will all have ways of coping with grief. But I think what we bring to the table is that we normalize that experience. We let you know that you're not crazy, that it's okay to be angry at the person that died. It's okay to be angry about a lot of things. It's okay to have a good day. It's okay to have a bad day. It never goes away. You just learn to live with it a little
That was
better.
my own experience. I experienced that also with my dad when he passed away a few years ago. The follow-up was very enriching. It was nice to have someone to check in on me every now and then. And it was very comforting. And as you mentioned, the bereavement started at the moment we met these folks. They were there not only for my dad, the patient, they were there for me and the rest of my family as well. And the follow-up was just terrific. I mean, it struck me as being, it's more than a job. I guess it has to be, maybe you look at it as a ministry sometimes.
Absolutely. You cannot work in hospice unless you have been called to it and you really feel a passion for it. Not everybody can work with death every day. But you really have to be able to see the healing that can go on even when you can't cure a disease. And I think we're brought up to believe that everything can be fixed, and it can't. And nurses in particular, I think you'll agree with me, Judy, we like to fix everything. So it's a really difficult position for someone who likes to fix everything, and doctors are the same way. Doctors become doctors because they want to cure and fix. So even doctors have issues when they see that the patient is not responding to treatment. But like I said, I've been around the block a time or two. I've seen people survive where no one thought they would survive. And is it the medicine or is it the love and support that surrounds them? I don't know.
And I think there's survival also in emotional healing. Sometimes people can't survive, but if they can be healed emotionally, I just think that's a miracle in itself, because you see people go through the process of you're diagnosed, then you're told that there's no hope. And that's devastating. And when you see those people go from angry, disbelief, into accepting, it's just, to me, that's a miracle. You know, you
We'll
see
never
that journey,
be beyond healing. You're right.
you see that journey, and I always tell people, I say, you know, we all ask for miracles, and I say some people get a miracle of a physical healing, and I've been a nurse almost as long as Donna, and I have seen physical healings. It's amazing. But what I have seen mostly is emotional healing. And when you see somebody who's so angry, so upset, and you see them accept it, and you see that calmness, that to me is a miracle.
And there are always things that people can hope for. There are always things that people can hope for outside of their disease. And one of the things that I like to say to my patients when I meet them is, tell me what you're most afraid of, and tell me what your best wish would be. Because truly, if we all ask ourselves those questions, that is where we live our life between every day. The things that we fear and the things that we hope for. Those are the periods at the end of our lives.
Margie, I wanted to ask you, as a survivor, you probably have experienced the whole range of things that all of these folks have talked about. Can you tell us a little bit from a personal angle what that was like for you?
Not what it was like, what it is like. I am a survivor every day I wake up. About a year after my surgery and my treatment, I met my current husband, who brought me back to life, who makes me laugh and makes me happy and makes me feel like a girl. And he also is the one now who holds my hand and wipes my tears that night before I have to go down to Pittsburgh, because I sometimes feel, okay, tomorrow I'm going down and they're going to say it's back. And that fear makes me feel like a hypochondriac. Every little bump on me, oh, this is it. Here we go. It's time again. I had a series of tests run just in March that I was convinced that it was going to be cancer again. And it is a constant battle of fear. And it is also a constant battle to remain positive and say, I'm okay. I'm going to see my son graduate from high school and watch my daughter learn to drive a car. And
Come up with something better there.
and
This was supposed to be a positive experience.
then I don't know what else. Buy a new pair of sneakers. But it is a constant emotional battle, and I don't know when that's going to end. I'd like to say, it'll end the day that they say to me, no more medicine, and we won't see you. You just have your regular mammogram, and you're good to go. Or maybe it won't. I don't know.
We usually see breast cancer survivors for 10 years. I remember I had a patient in our waiting room, and she says to me, I have to get out of this waiting room because everyone's dying. And I said, no, not everyone is dying. And I said, most of these people will be discharged from our clinic, which you will too. And sure enough, 10 years later, we follow them for 10 years. And she says to me, you were right. I am cancer-free. I am being discharged. But it's a long process, because some people we follow longer than others. But truly, there are many more cancer survivors than anyone would ever dream. I believe there's about 11 million in America.
About 14 million.
14 million. It grows every year. So you think of all the survivors. We have many, many more survivors than anyone realizes. I know she said the statistics, 1 in every 2 women, and 1 in every 3 men. But many of those people are survivors. They will never have another trace of disease. So cancer is not a death sentence. I see cancer as a chronic disease. It becomes a chronic disease just like diabetes, just like any other chronic disease.
And it can be managed.
And it can be managed for long, long, long periods of time. But we also have people at the end of treatment, and at 10 years we say goodbye, and it's so wonderful. And you would be surprised at how many people that are discharged from seeing the oncologist. You don't have too many more years. Think of it.
You're
Almost
halfway
halfway.
there.
Judy, could you talk a little bit about some of the other treatments, maybe things that are happening locally? And I don't know if maybe Tina would also want to talk about advances in treatments.
Well, it's very interesting. There's two really big advances. 60% of all chemotherapy that's being developed are going to be oral pills. So you think of that. We're not going to see a lot of people in the clinics like we do now. We're not going to see the IVs. Oral medications do certainly have side effects, but 60% of everything in development. And then the other thing that I think is very, very exciting is the biologicals. You look at, we're manipulating, most of our new chemo drugs are biologicals. So they don't have the hair loss. They might have like nausea, vomiting, fevers, but those are very specifically targeted to certain cancer drugs. I honestly think in the future, if you have a cancer, they're going to develop a specific cancer vaccine for your cancer. And I know they're working on it. And that's where I think the future is. But the biologicals are wonderful, and they are coming out with new ones. They all ended MAB, and I can't tell you how many there are. But almost all of the new treatments are either pills or the biologicals, which are great, because they don't have the hair loss, which hair loss seems to really bother people the most.
That's what makes you look like a cancer patient.
That's right.
And you said about being able to take an oral chemotherapy. If you've never been through it yourself or been with someone else, you don't realize the difference between spending maybe 8 hours a day in a chair hooked up to a machine, 5 days a week, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or something like that, versus taking a pill in your home. That gives you your life back. Even if you don't feel like getting off the couch, you're home in your couch. You're not having to drive an hour, 2 hours, be in a clinic, or stay overnight, to be close to a facility that you can get your treatment. So the idea of being able to just take your cancer medicine like you take your vitamin, that alone is a tremendous improvement in lifestyle and quality of life for a patient.
That's right.
Emily, I wanted to tell you about another program that hospice is involved in, because hospice really is for patients that have decided they don't want to pursue any more aggressive treatment. But we also have a collaborative project with some visiting nurses where they can consult us under a palliative care program. So a person who's still getting chemo or radiation, but having issues with pain or nausea or vomiting, which we really are very expert at managing. We have a lot of unusual tricks up our sleeves. They can continue to receive their treatment, but have the expertise of the hospice nurses as far as symptom control.
That's
so
wonderful.
that really is a wonderful opportunity for patients to kind of get the best of both worlds.
Right, that little bit extra of being made comfortable even though you are still pursuing treatment.
The more your symptoms are managed, the better you do with everything.
Right.
Healing's
not hurting, right?
Exactly.
That's one of the phrases that comes
Exactly.
along a lot. So do what you can to feel better.
Exactly. Yes. My fellow RN reminded me that Dr. Lowe's, who is the medical director of hospice, is also board certified in palliative care and does palliative consults at Titusville Hospital. So while a person is continuing to pursue aggressive treatments, and for many diseases, they can also have that palliative approach, which focuses on the comfort issues, the quality issues of life. And the more you manage those issues, the more energy your body has to fight whatever disease it's fighting. So we're very lucky for a very small community to have such a talented man.
Absolutely. And Emily, I was going to address some of the things that had come across. Today, it's a 68% survival rate for cancer treatment. Back in 1913, it was 1 in 9. In the 40s, we were looking at 25 to 40%. So the fact that we're to 67, 68% survivor rate, that's incredible. Along with what Judy was saying about what's on the horizon, what is research finding, some of those things as far as treatment. I actually got to sit in here an American Cancer Society researcher speak recently, and he talked about the project he was actually working on, but it's one of several, and where it's really targeted therapy, where they're learning about the cells and they're learning about, it's amazing you hear that, about the oxygen and the binder and, technical scientific words, but how using that, they are developing treatments where it will attach exactly only to the cancer cell or to the cell that possesses the ability to become cancer. And that's amazing. And that's part of that nuclear medicine or whatever you want to call it. That's a lot of what's on that horizon and what they're looking at. And he actually is from the Philadelphia area. Parents actually are from Erie, so close by. He's doing his research at Fox Chase, and he's actually into the stage 2 of human trials. So, I mean, it's on the horizon, and I think we're going to see that very soon. And I think you're very right. It's going to change a lot about the journey. But I think that emotional piece is always going to be there. We talk about a survivor as someone who has heard those words, "You have cancer." Because from that moment, your family, those around you are all starting to fight that disease. We're fighting it, and we're fighting it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that fear that you talked about, I talked to people that are out several years. I had a conversation with a 37-year cancer survivor not long ago, but every time something's not right, there's that little nag back there. But the more that we can support each other, the more research that we can fund, the better treatment, the better detection, and the preventative. The more we can do preventative,
Absolutely.
The better off we're going to be.
And I want to bring back to Margie just for a second, because you said that it was your second mammogram you've ever had that detected your cancer. So if you had not been a good girl and knew that at 40 it's time to go get that mammogram, if you had waited until you felt something or until you were not feeling well, wait until you were 50.
Right.
And my tumor had the same. You would not have had the same experience.
Right. My tumor actually started on the back breast wall and grew outward. So even the oncologist had a hard time finding it just by poking around. And when I had to go have my first mammogram, I remember thinking, really, do I have to do this? Do I really have to go? I hear all these horror stories. Maybe I'll just skip it. And I don't know what made me walk in, and then they scheduled one for the next year. And, there are other exams that are worse than the mammogram. And
it's good to talk about, just to say it. So it's not like we're covering our mouths or we're, using euphemisms. You go get a mammogram.
Right.
So you know whether or not you have breast cancer and you can deal with it.
Right. And I was adopted as a baby. And so the whole, what is your family history question, I can't answer. And the thought has crossed my mind 10,000 times. Maybe I should look for her. Maybe I should find out what my family history is. And then I'm also a nervous, kind of a hyperactive person. So I think, okay, if I knew, though, I'd probably be just sitting around waiting. Oh, well, it's going to eat. It's a really hard call. And the first thing that I did, though, when I did go to McGee was I said, I want to know how my baby girl, what risk she is. I want any test to be run on me that can be run so I can tell my daughter what to expect in life.
I think what you said is really good. Sometimes embarrassment about the tests will keep us from having them. A mammogram is not horrible. We may think it is. It isn't. A colonoscopy may sound horrible. It may not be the most pleasant thing in the world, but they use good drugs, and you need to have it. I'm fighting this problem with my husband right now.
Judy has a great saying. You and your sisters have a saying about colonoscopies that we use a lot at Relay, if you want to share it. Oh. About surviving.
Oh, my father died of colon cancer, which was a real shame. He never had a colonoscopy. And, if you get an early colonoscopy, you survive 95% of the time. So what you have to do is, my father was diagnosed at 64. And, of course, you really need to tell people, whatever age they were, they should, your children should be checked at least 10 years prior to that. So we've all had our colonoscopies. You don't have to tell you, the prep's much worse than the exam. You don't remember anything about the scope. But it does give you peace of mind, because obviously my father had it, and when we looked back, we thought we had no cancer. When my father had it, we realized that we had colon cancer in almost every generation. So certainly we have polyps when we have our colonoscopies. But it's much better to take out a little polyp than to die of colon cancer. And unfortunately, my father did not have insurance. He ignored he ignored his symptoms, and I can remember my mother calling me probably almost a year before he was diagnosed and told me he had some bleeding, and I said he has to have a scope. And I called my mother like a week or two later. Oh, she said it was just his hemorrhoids. Well, it wasn't. My father certainly could have been alive if he would have been caught at that early stage. The other thing that I always like to say too is when my father was diagnosed, we had one drug to fight his cancer. We had 5-FU and we had radiation. And since that time, when I see people with colon cancer, there are just so many more drugs, so many more treatments. Now, my father was diagnosed at stage 4. He would have died regardless, but he would have lived longer than the 9 months that he lived. But colonoscopies do not hurt. I strongly recommend everyone has one by age 50, and if you have a family history, maybe 40, or if they've been diagnosed at 40, some of these kids really should have them in their 25, 30 range, because a polyp will turn to cancer if you don't get it out.
And you always say it's better to be a colonoscopy survivor than a cancer survivor.
That's right.
So, and the same thing, you'd rather be a mammogram survivor than a breast cancer survivor. So, take advantage of these advances of early detection and, know your body and make the most of it. Tina, you said some great stuff about advances in medicine and the funding of all of these advances, or a lot of it, comes from the American Cancer Society. Relay for Life is the main fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. So let's talk a little bit more about that event as it's coming up June 13th and 14th here in our area for Titusville. Maybe start with a little bit of background about Relay for Life.
So we've got like 6 hours now.
Yeah. Or 15 minutes. A quick review.
All right.
First of all, and also make sure people understand that Relay for Life is not a race.
No, it is not. So Relay for Life started in 1985, where one gentleman, Dr. Gordy Klatt, wanted to bring to light the plight of colon cancer survivors. And the importance of screening and things like that. So he spent 24 hours going around a track in Tacoma, Washington. He had few supporters that would come and join him. He, took the required breaks in order to be able to do that. And then the next year, 27 teams joined him, and Relay for Life was born. And it has since become an international movement. Relay for Life is in 20 different countries and over 5,100 communities in the United States. And that's important. And I think that's very important because sometimes that's how people hear the message about making healthy lifestyle choices. I'm gonna take a quick moment and do the nag. No smoking, no tanning, no physical activity, proper nutrition. These are things we know help people reduce their risk of cancer. Relay for Life is really that vehicle that we use to do multiple things. One, help to get that education out there, get that information out there, talk about the importance of things you can do to reduce your risk, getting the screenings. If you're diagnosed, how can you be helped? How can the American Cancer Society help you? We have the 800-227-2345 number, and when people from the communities call, we talk about different programs. We share with them, depending on their needs, about programs like hospice and palliative care and different things like that so that we can help them. And then also, Relay for Life helps people to really be empowered and fight back against this disease. As a caregiver, sometimes it's a struggle because your survivor's fighting. You see your survivor fighting. They're doing the chemo, they're doing the radiation, they're doing the medication, whatever it is that the doctor says they need to do, and you feel helpless. Like, you can't do that with them. Relay for Life gives people an ability, whether it's a friend, it's someone they know in the community, it's a family member, it's someone they care deeply about, to go out and fight back against this disease. We all want this disease eradicated. We want to celebrate more birthdays. We talked about the 14 million cancer survivors. Relay's about that, and then Relay's about that celebration. Celebrating life. Celebrating the fact that, yes, you've been diagnosed, but look at what you're doing. Look at what you're accomplishing. You've got, kids that you're taking care of. You've got family members. Look how you're doing part in your community, and really celebrating that life and celebrating more birthdays. So at Relay, we celebrate our survivors who choose to come to the event and be acknowledged as survivors, because even though it's the year 2014, some people, that word is just not one that they feel empowered by. They don't want to be known as a survivor. We're noticing that a lot with our youth. especially at some of our collegiate relays where they don't want to be labeled by that, and we want to celebrate that. We also remember, we have a luminaria ceremony. We remember those individuals who have been diagnosed that are not with us. And then we continue to honor those that are with us. And then also talk about those that support our cancer survivors and their journey. And then we fight back. We talk about that education, getting that out, getting that information. Relay for Life is the main fundraising event for the American Cancer Society. And that really helps us do a lot of funding. Especially funding for research. The American Cancer Society is the second is the largest not-for-profit organization, second only to the government in funding. So one of the other things we do is we empower people to talk to our legislators. Our government controls huge amounts of laws and money that can be used for the fight against cancer. It's interesting. The more that I'm around, the more I talk to researchers, the more I learn about what the government actually can do to help fight this disease. So we empower our folks to reach out and let their lawmakers know what's important to them. So the Relay for Life helps us to fund research. It also helps us to fund programs and services. We have the 800 number. We're the only organization directly related to cancer available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to anyone with questions.
1-800-227-2345.
Perfect.
She's hired.
That's 1-800-227-2345.
But wait, there's more.
You call now. Give you a coupon for a free colonoscopy.
Hey now.
That's something that in our relay meetings, we're given that number. We're told, have it in your cell phone. Give it to someone when you find out that they have been diagnosed or there's a loved one that they know that's been diagnosed. And I've done that, I think, 2 or 3 times already in the last year and a half that I've had that number in my phone. It's sad that we have to, but it's a great resource that it's there.
And what people are telling us is they need accurate, unbiased information. So that's that 800 number is there for. So whether it's someone who wants to know if this side effect's typical for this drug, or I remember I was out of town and my mother-in-law was diagnosed with skin cancer. And by the time I got home, the family had her going through the whole gambit. And my mother-in-law was like, "You're not touching my hair. Well, I don't care what else we do." And she had a squamous carcinoma, which is a form of skin cancer and was very easy to treat. I called the 800 number. Even though I worked for the American Cancer Society, I called them to get information. What is this? What is typical treatment? So that we know what to expect. Should we be asking the doctor? Because when you hear that diagnosis, having sat in that room with an individual and you hear that diagnosis, your brain doesn't instantly go, "Okay, I need to know the A, B, C, D, and E." Your brain goes, "You said what to me?" So our 800 number helps to provide that information. Also, we have services, which I can talk on forever, but we really look at access to care. That is huge. That is especially huge in our area. Getting to cancer treatment centers. You talked about lodging, the hair. We have programs and services that help individuals diagnosed with the skin and hair changes that go through. So Relay for Life helps to fund all of that as well. So Relay for Life is huge. It is huge to help people feel like they can do something against this disease, and it's huge in helping us to celebrate the lives of more survivors and have more survivors and be able to be there for them.
You sound very energized. I mean, every one of you have been energized by this subject, but as an organizer, especially for the event, you must draw a great deal of energy from everybody and all of the things that you've learned and the folks that you talk to.
Absolutely. I work with a lot of different volunteers in a lot of different communities, and their passion, their stamina, you know what, we're not taking this. We're going to kick cancer's butt, and we're going to kick it hard, is amazing. And then you hear the stories. And I know you ladies have probably many more stories than I have, but the stories of the survivors and what they've gone through and what they've done and how they continue on. And I know one woman who was just out of treatment with a walker, and she was determined she was going to be at that relay for 24 hours because she wasn't going to let cancer win and keep her away from something she felt so passionate about. She'd done relay prior to her diagnosis, and she was determined she was going to be there throughout the rest. Those stories, they're just inspiring how you deal with this disease, you deal with that uncertainty, but they use it to enhance their life, to be more powerful, and to fight back against this disease. And every Margie does the luminaria ceremony, and all those bags, every bag has a name. Every bag has a story of inspiration, a story of how we are working together, even if our survivor's not with us anymore. And there's a shot on the screen of Luminaria around the track. All of that, that's all inspiration. And we have about 700 volunteers that work with each staff person. And it's their energy that keep us going. It is definitely the energy of our volunteers and our survivors that make this amazing. They make Relay a community event, and they make it an amazing event.
It's
Wow.
important, I think, if you have never participated in Relay or you're unfamiliar, Relay for Life is really a festival. You know, we refer to it as a fundraiser because that's the main point. It's to raise money for the American Cancer Society to fund all of their efforts to help cancer patients. But Relay for Life itself, it's a festival. We are down at Carter Field. Everyone has a team. You set up a tent. You decorate. There are different themes. There are games. There are refreshments and snacks and music and dancing and activities and ceremonies. It is definitely not a sad time or a somber time. It has its moments of both, but it's definitely a celebration as well. And it's not just one thing. If you haven't participated in it, not even as a fundraiser, but if you haven't participated in it as a guest, please come down this year. Check it out, take part in it, see what it's about, and hopefully you can kind of catch the spirit of Relay.
As a journalist, I've covered several of these events, both here in Titusville and in Oil City over the years, and I've just always been super impressed. I think the most impressive part of the whole 24 hours is probably the Luminaria. It's probably the most visually impressive, but listening to the people who are actually doing the walk around the track, I'll walk with them with a recorder or a camera and just listen to them talk or banter and then ask them questions as they go along, or just sitting by the side of the track and listening to things as they go by. It's truly, truly impressive. It's inspiring because this kind of survivorship, the kind of networking that you've talked about, the organization, the unconditional regard that you talked about, really comes home, and it can be drawn and used for so many other things besides fighting cancer. It can be a real life changer for so many things, both in and out of the cancer community.
Absolutely.
And it is important to note, and you had asked me, Emily, to explain a little bit that although it's called a relay, there is no how fast can, well, we have a few people in a few communities that like to run. Most of us prefer the walk pace. And it is not about you pass the baton in the sense that the teams make sure they have someone on the track at all times. Mm-hmm. But it is not who can run the fastest or what that is really about enduring the race. Because our cancer survivors endure it every day. Their families endure it every day, every minute of every day. So it's about being there, supporting each other and helping each other. And it's a lot of fun. Now, I tell people, be careful when you come to relay because it becomes an addiction. But it's the best kind of addiction to have because it's an addiction to helping others.
Absolutely.
I like
it really is fun. And what I really like about it, and I don't want us to lose touch of that this really is about life and celebrating life. And sometimes my concern is we can get so caught up in the terminology that we use about fighting cancer and it becoming a battle that we never want people who feel that their loved one has died, that it wasn't because they weren't fighting enough or we weren't fighting enough. You know, there are many ways to fight battles. There's the hard war, there's the soft war. And we all, of course, want a cure, but just the endurance of the human spirit is really what we're celebrating.
Absolutely.
And I think people really feel that during the Luminaria ceremony, especially. We talk about it being fun, but that's a moment where it's very emotional but special. I know last year we buried my husband on the day of relay, and having his family and friends with us for that Luminaria ceremony made it so much more special because it really was about celebrating a life and a battle well fought, even though not won the way we wanted. And there's a dignity in that, and that's really special and touching.
But he did win. Every day from that
Right.
diagnosis, he won.
Right. We went out there and had fun.
I like that you mentioned dignity. There's a lot of things that have gotten mentioned here that have been very good today, and I'll come back to it again. The term that you mentioned was unconditional regard. The fact that you do bring dignity to everyone that's involved in this, that you do get energy, that through your networking, through your attitude as a survivor, other people can learn to survive, and the skills that our RNs bring to this. I like what you said about when you treat the patient, you're also treating the family. There is so much that we can learn from this and apply to so many other things, and it works well here. I can see it in each of your faces. I can see it every day in people that I know that are involved in this in one way or another. This has been a wonderful conversation.
It really has. Thank you all so much for being here and being a part of this and sharing your stories and your everyday experiences.
I just want to say that I've never been shy or quiet about the fact that I'm a cancer survivor, because I want people to see me and say, she had it, and she beat it, and I can do this too. And the very first year I relayed, a little boy from my school, I'm a teacher, and I taught for 18 years out at Hightown School. And the young man was in 3rd grade, and he walked with me. And about 1:30 in the morning, I said to him, Teddy, aren't you going home anytime soon? And he said, why, no, I was Mrs. Roberts then. No, Mrs. Roberts, I'm not going. I'm going to stay and walk with you. That's why I'm here. Teddy is now diagnosed with cancer. He is a 6th grader at Titusville Middle School, and I will be walking with him this year.
Wow, what a story. Oh, that is so neat.
To life.
Absolutely.
Probably the best thing we've heard all evening with this program is to life. And it's interesting. We started out the program by saying that with Relay just around the corner, this is an opportunity to celebrate life, to take a look at the subject of cancer from many different angles and facets. And I do believe that we've done that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being with us. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. Again, my name is Mark Heim. This is Stream Television, and this has been an opportunity to talk about cancer with the Relay for Life coming up soon. Thank you, ladies, all of you, for being here, for each and every one of your individual experiences, and all of the information and all of the fun and the love that you've brought to this. Thank you again. For Stream Television, I'm Mark Heim.